Well, what an absolutely unbelievable performance and win that was. But it almost wasn't. And before we start going on about what a great performance that really was, let's start with a man that I'm always very critical of on this channel. And I know you all have your own opinions about that. But we wouldn't be sitting here talking about an emphatic win where we could have won probably 5 or 6-0, ended up only being 3-0, if it wasn't for David De Gea in those first 15 minutes. The saves that he made from Harvey Barnes and Iheanacho, arguably no other goalkeeper in the Premier League, possibly even in the world, would have saved both of those chances. And that is David De Gea's greatest strength. He is a shot stopper. Obviously, both saves coming with his right hand. I'm obviously always critical of the left hand. But those two saves really then set the tone for the rest of the performance because it lifted the crowd up. It gave us the belief that we needed to start pushing on. And for those first 15 to 20 minutes, Leicester were really the team on top. We were slow to get going. The midfield, kind of like what it was when I spoke about Fred and Sabitzer a couple of weeks ago, is without Casemiro holding the midfield and the defence together, we're a little bit loose. Gary Neville was talking on commentary about how fluid the team was, but as positive as that is going forward, it's very much a negative defensively because it just leaves so many gaps. And that's where those initial chances came from. And thankfully, De Gea kept us in the game in those first 15, 20 minutes. And then the first goal, a moment of brilliance from Bruno Fernandes to spin the ball on the outside of his foot in behind for Marcus Rashford. And it was 1-0. And from that point on, it was just all about Manchester United. A phenomenal performance from that point on was the decision to start Rashford down the middle, proving dividends again with that ball in behind, allowing him to sprint away from the defence and put the ball into the back of the net. Into the second half, and it was a piece of tactical brilliance from Erik ten Hag to take Garnacho off and put Sancho on, but put Sancho in the middle, Weghorst up front, Rashford out to the left, and keep Bruno on the right. Now, I don't want to have a go at Garnacho. I'm definitely not going to have a go at Garnacho, but for me, he is much more of an impact player. I see him more like Dan James, who we had over the last few seasons, and Javier Hernandez before that, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's the sort of player you bring on when the game's starting to get stretched, and he can use his pace and his skill to threaten defences once they're already tiring. He really seems to struggle to have an impact from the start, and even though Rashford did get that goal from down the middle, I always feel Rashford is most dangerous on the left-hand side. So I was pleased to see the substitution that Erik ten Hag made. But like I said, the decision to move Sancho as the one in the middle and keep Bruno Fernandes on the right-hand side was absolutely phenomenal because that is one of the best, if not the best performance I've seen from Jadon Sancho so far in a Manchester United shirt. He was absolutely everywhere around the midfield. I know when he played for Borussia Dortmund, people sort of got the impression that he played sort of like as a right winger or a left winger. But Borussia Dortmund played a 3-4-3 a la like Antonio Conte, where Son and Kulusevski sometimes aren't like all the way out wide. They're more like tucked in as creative players. And that's where Sancho's at his best. He's not the quickest, but he is very skillful and he is very good at passing. So you put him in that central area, he will move around, he'll pull defenders all over the place, and that created an awful lot of chances for us in that second half. But before I go on to talk about the main players in today's game, I'm going to talk about someone that was only getting talked about really for one moment in that entire game, and that's Marcel Sabitzer. And he might not necessarily have been player of the match, but in my opinion, he was our most important player today. I was so impressed with Marcel Sabitzer, and we'll get to the potential red card. But before we do, his performance today I thought was as good, if not better, than anything we've seen from Christian Eriksen so far this season. And I love Christian Eriksen, you all know that. I absolutely adore Christian Eriksen. But the amount of effort that Sabitzer was putting in around the midfield, trying to break up play, getting on the ball, his passing, short and long, were near perfect all game. His little touches, little turns, keeping the ball moving. He did a lot better than Fred on the ball next to him, I have to say. And if you look at all the chances that we created today up until he went off in the 80th minute, Marcel Sabitzer either started or was heavily involved in every single good thing that Manchester United did today. Like I say, might not necessarily have been player of the match, but in my opinion, certainly our most important player as that link up from defence to attack. He was the one that was finding Sancho, finding Bruno, finding Rashford to create all of the chances that we had today. And I was really impressed with the performance that he had. And Bayern are apparently letting us have him for 20 million euros if we want him. I would be doing everything to get that deal done right now. He looks like he's going to be a very important player for us, certainly for the rest of this season, and even with Eriksen back, will be a good rotation option with Eriksen going forward. As for the red card itself, it's never a red card, in my opinion. I'm going to say that. I'm a Manchester United fan. But I also think if it would have been given as a red card, it would have been yet another victim of slow motion, like the Casemiro one. You watch the challenge at live speed, there's barely any contact. It's just a boop. It's a little tap. Nothing more. Yes, it's studs on leg. It's high. It's reckless, but it's not dangerous, in my opinion. He's not out of control because he is pulling his leg away when the contact is made. So it is at most a yellow card, if it's even a yellow card. I don't understand Graham Souness saying, especially given the fact the amount of challenges he used to make that were way worse than that when he was playing. He's just saying that because he's a Liverpool fan and he thinks he just wants Sabitzer sent off. It's not a red card. It's never a red card. Anyway, the players that Sabitzer were passing the ball to, there become your players of the match. For me, player of the match was Bruno Fernandes. I know it was given to Marcus Rashford because he scored the goals, but again, Bruno was the one that was creating the chances. His movement, his work rate, the little turns. You know, he's not a winger, but he was taking on the fullback with these little jinks and turns that the fullbacks just couldn't live with. And some of the passes in, I mean, he got 2 assists. He could have had about 5. Weghorst missed 2 or 3 from his passes. The miss from Dalot, where all he's got to do is go with his left leg, but instead he goes with the outside of his right. That would have been another assist for Bruno. His chance creation today was absolutely phenomenal, and he could have had a couple of goals himself, going for that audacious chip at the end as well. Bruno, 100% my player of the match. And then, of course, we have to talk about the man of the moment once again. Marcus Rashford. We're kind of running out of superlatives. This is very reminiscent of when Ronaldo went on that season where he scored 44 goals for us and we won the league and we won the Champions League, because he just scores every single game. And he's so dangerous. Doesn't matter if he's down the middle, out wide. He commits players. He beats defenders. He could still probably work on his finishing just a little bit. Obviously, the goal that he took today was a fantastic finish where he had the time to set himself and then place it in the corner. But he still is a little bit rash, pardon the pun, when it comes to sort of like instinctive finishes. He always tends to resort to just smacking the ball rather than just almost taking half a second to set himself. The one that he could have had in the second half where he ran through 2 or 3 players, all he had to do was, if he got his head up, he could have just easily placed that in the far corner. But yeah, he just got a little bit quick and he smacked it straight at the goalkeeper, and it could have been even more. And like I say, it could have been 5, 6, 7, 8, potentially even more. We were so dominant, so creative in that second half, and nothing typified that more than the third goal. Once again, Sabitzer involved. Martinez wins the ball back. Sabitzer takes the ball, plays it up into Sancho, out to Bruno, back to Sancho, and on the left foot, his weak foot, showing Diogo Dalot what he should have done in the first half, just caresses that ball perfectly into the far corner. And like I say, capped off what was a fantastic performance for him and for the team as a whole. But before I round it off, I'm going to say 2 players that I felt really sorry for today. Firstly, James Maddison. If you've watched my channel, you know how I feel about James Maddison. I think he's one of the best creative midfielders, best attacking midfielders in world football. He deserves to be playing for a Champions League club, in my opinion. Whether or not that's in this country or in another country, I don't know. I just think he would excel so well in a much better team, and I feel like some of his Leicester teammates let him down today because, especially in that first half, he was creating so many chances that Leicester couldn't really take. And in the second half, he was trying to basically do everything himself. And in the end, it just didn't quite work out for him. So I felt sorry for James Maddison. And then, of course, we have to talk about Weghorst, who, look, what he does for the team, I cannot speak highly enough of. It's something we have desperately lacked. And like, we all moaned at the start of the season when the fans were getting on our back about, oh, Ronaldo's not scoring goals and he's not even working for the team. Well, Wout Weghorst isn't scoring goals, but he ain't half working for the team. The amount of yards that man puts in for a striker is absolutely unbelievable. And if it's not for the effort that he puts in off the ball, the likes of Sancho, Bruno, Rashford, Sabitzer today, they wouldn't have had the time. Even Dalot and Shaw getting involved in the wide areas, they wouldn't have had anywhere near as much time or much space on the ball if it wasn't for the effort that Weghorst was putting in. And I just felt really sorry for him because he deserved a goal today for the effort that he put in, but it's just not quite happening for him right yet. And as Gary Neville said on commentary, he probably wouldn't have been available for a free loan if it wasn't for the fact that he isn't prolific. Obviously, he scored those goals at the World Cup. I'd like to think that if he managed to get himself a goal, then perhaps that would then start coming for him as well. But yeah, I think right now, it'll be interesting to see what Ten Hag does against Barcelona, whether or not he'll continue to play Weghorst. I think he might, but he's going to have a really tough choice to make about who he leaves out. I think the smartest thing to probably do for the second leg is to start how we finished, but with Casemiro in for McTominay. So I would have, well, I mean, obviously the back line would change. I'd still put Wan-Bissaka back in, despite how well Dalot played today. I think against Barcelona, you need your best defensive player in the fullback areas. So I'd be starting Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez and Shaw. I would have Casemiro with Sabitzer. And then I would have Bruno, Sancho, Rashford and Weghorst up front. That is how I would start up against Barcelona. And probably how I'd start against Newcastle as well. I think it is a massive week coming up for us. That game really couldn't have gone any better for us today. 3-0, a clean sheet, a fantastic performance, loads of chances created. Moves us 3 points behind Man City and 6 points behind Arsenal. Keeps us, I would say keeps us in the title race. Absolutely, because even though the other teams have games in hand on us, they could lose those games in hand. So we're keeping touching distance of the title race. We have put a gap ahead of Spurs before they play West Ham this afternoon. And yeah, what better way to build momentum going into a humongous week of action against Barcelona and Newcastle than putting out a message that we're at our absolute best right now and we're ready to take on absolutely anyone, even if we're not at full strength in that game. So with a full strength team going into Barcelona and going into Newcastle, I am very confident that we can pick up the wins in both games. Hopefully that will be the case. And that's really it. I don't really think I have much else to say. As always, let me know your comments, your thoughts down in the comments. I'll post my usual questions in the description of the video so you can have your own discussions in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like on the video as well and subscribe if you're new around here. I will see you next for my predictions for the Champions League on Tuesday morning. Thank you very much for watching.